Okay, all right, guys. This is why we got to be on time to these things so that I don't have to keep letting people in. Okay, so this folder, I'll put it in the chat one more time so the people who just came in get it. But this folder right here has all of the different review resources that I have that I've given. So on this document right here, the important dates and review documents. This has a bunch of different stuff. Really, in terms of studying, the Master Study Guide is probably going to be the most effective thing to use. It's 36 pages long. Me and Leah Burton, who's at Myers Park now, made it a couple years ago. It's pretty extensive. It also has all of the it has the percentages, like the breakdown, what percentage of the exam comes from each unit. That way, when you're studying, you really shouldn't spend a ton of time studying like sensation and perception, because that's only 6 to 8% of the exam. But the cognition unit is like 16%. All right, so you should definitely spend more time studying that. Crash Course Psychology. I think Crash Course is really good. It's quick, just a nice little review. Barron's, that's just the link for Amazon, I think. FRQ terms by unit. So this right here has all of, at least for the most part, I tried to update it last year, but I may have missed some stuff. But this has all of the terms that have shown up on FRQs since the beginning of the test, and how many times they have shown up. Now, I didn't update it has the old unit names and the order, the old unit order. They updated the course 2 years ago, but it's still so you can see operational definition has come up 6 times on FRQs. Okay, so there's a good chance that that could come up. One thing, make sure. So if for FRQs, one of the things that they have really pushed a lot recently on the FRQs is the personality unit, and things like the big 5 traits, which I've been going over in class. I'll go over them in here too if people want. And we'll have time at the end if anything that people want to go over, we can go over. But the big 5 traits have come up quite a bit recently. Okay. Things like external versus internal locus of control. They really like asking about that. And then things like, let's see. Oh, like heuristics. Make sure you know that stuff for the FRQs. Okay. Types of graphs. This just says what different types of graphs could show up. Thompson's top tested review questions. Okay, that was made by another teacher. It is just a just broad review questions. Guide to statistics. College board review videos with viewing guides. And then the College Board review videos from 2021, which are all on YouTube. Okay. All right. So let's just do some general. And then in this folder, review sessions, hook review sessions, list of confusing pairs. All right. Some general information, just so everybody is on the same page with how everything's going to go on Tuesday. Okay. So. Test is obviously 100 multiple choice questions in 70 minutes, and then 2 FRQs in 50 minutes. One of them is a research design FRQ, which is like the one that we did recently, and then one of them is a concept application one, which is going to be more of a scenario with terms to apply to it. And that's in 50 minutes. On Tuesday, it's at noon on Tuesday. You should arrive at Ardrey Kell by 11:15. You're going to come in the front entrance, okay? They're going to have to do the body scanners and all that sort of stuff, I think. What you need, a wooden pencil. You can't use mechanical. Bring a couple, especially if you like a sharpened pencil. A blue or black pen. Okay, bring a couple of those just in case you run out of ink, your student ID, and a snack. There will be a break in between the multiple choice and the FRQ where you'll be able to go out in the hallway and have get some water, go to the bathroom and whatnot. What you don't need, okay, if you drive, just leave your phone in your car. Okay. If you don't drive and you're going to need your phone, I would recommend bringing like a little tote bag or something. You're going to have to leave it outside of the classroom, but it'll be safe. Your Chromebook, don't bring that. Don't bring a smartwatch. Don't bring AirPods. Don't bring a blanket. Don't bring a pillow. And then purse or backpack. Just bring like a little tote bag if you need one. Other important points, okay, so get here by 11:15. It is a cluster on test day, okay, especially because APES tests before us. So APES is really big. So are we. We're the biggest. APES is one of the biggest ones. Get here by 11:15. There'll be a big line outside. You're going to be excused from all of your classes on the day of the AP exam, so you don't need to go to any of them. If you come to school and you want to go, like if you ride the bus and you don't have a ride, you're going to have to come to school. They will probably, my guess is, put you in the cafeteria. If you want to go to class, you can, but you don't have to. Student drivers with a parking pass must park in the lower lot. And if you don't show up for the exam, your school account will be charged $40 and you will have to take a teacher-made final exam in June. Rustomass. So we're allowed to just leave campus once testing is over. Yeah, I mean, what? You're not allowed to leave when you're done. You have to wait for everybody to finish. But yeah, once testing is over, the test will be over by probably about 3 or so. Especially if you are in the aux gym. Here are the rooms that you're going to be in. So if you are A through HOLL, you're going to be in the aux gym. Some of you are going to be in your own classroom, and so that's good. So they will have. Oh crap! They will have all of this up in the mall area when you come in. Okay. Are we leaving the same time as everyone else at school or after? Probably after. I said it's probably going to be over about 3. So probably after. All right, and then just some tips and tricks. Okay, tomorrow or Tuesday, get together with some friends before the test. Go to Chick-fil-A or whatnot and do some last-minute cramming. Bring a cheap watch if you have one. There will be a clock in the room. One thing, make sure if there is not a clock in the room, or if the proctor does not write the start and stop time on the board, please do not let them start the test without doing that. We've had that happen in the past, and it screwed over some people because they didn't know how much time was left. Okay, so make sure that you can see the clock, make sure you know exactly how much time you have, but don't stress about time. Don't change your answers. Are we allowed to have a blank sheet of paper during the test? No. You can write in the test book, though. Don't change your answers. Go with your gut. Exception there, if you find the correct answer in another question, which you might, obviously go back and change it. For the multiple choice, do 2 to 3 passes over it. First time, do the ones that you know. Second time, the ones that you're like kind of unsure of. Third time, ones that you have no clue about. Don't leave anything blank. You have a 20% chance of getting it right, even if you guess. Okay. What I would recommend, I would say, you have 70 minutes for it. Try to be about 60% done by the halfway mark. Okay. That way you're leaving yourself time at the end if you need to go back over some stuff. Spend a few minutes doing a brain dump right when you start. As I said, you can just write in the test book. If you've never heard of a term on the multiple choice, it is unlikely that is going to be the answer. Let's see. This is very important. Answers that say never, always, all, none, absolutes. That is almost never going to be the right answer, unless the answer is the all or none response. okay, which is just, that's never going to be the right answer. Hi, Ash. Okay, watch for the word closely. That means that the right answer might not exactly be there, but it's something close. And then finally, on the FRQs, do a quick outline before you start. Ash, I didn't get anything from you, but let me know how everything went. Do a quick outline. You're gonna have plenty of room. You're literally gonna have like 50 pages in the test booklet, so you're gonna have to write. You're gonna write a page and a half, maybe. So. Okay. Hold on one sec. Okay. Answer the points that you know. Skip the ones you don't, and leave spaces to come back and make an educated guess. And then always include the definition of the term in the question, even if they don't ask for it. How long should our FRQ be? Depends on how long. I mean, most FRQs you're not going to write more than 2 pages for it. Be as concise and as precise as possible. Okay. You don't need to use flowery. You don't need to overwrite. You risk contradicting yourself if you do that. Do we write the letter on the part that we are answering, or do we only just underline stuff? You can write the letter on there. That's fine. I would write the letter. I would. You can write the letter, and I would write the letter and underline. Okay. FRQ has to be in pen. If you write it in pencil, they will not grade it. When we answer the bullet points, do we write as a whole paragraph for each bullet point, or do we start a new? Each bullet point should be a separate paragraph. Okay, just think that, and we're going to look at FRQs in a little bit, but just think of it like it's 7 separate short answer questions. Okay, so each one would be a different answer. They are not connected to each other usually. Okay, all right. So can we leave nice messages for the graders while writing our FRQs? Sure, that's fine. Okay, anything that is not part of the FRQ will not be graded. So I would just leave some space to make sure that you're not trying to write it as part of the essay. But yes, you can leave a nice message for the graders. I wish I was doing it this year, but I'm going to not be in the country. Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions about that stuff before we get going? Hold on one sec. Julie's asking me something. What? Oh, yeah. Oh. Okay, do we do our FRQ outline on the FRQ pages before our actual answers? I would do the outline on the, there's going to be like a space in the booklet. I would do the outline like in the FRQ, like right after the question. You'll see what I mean. It's the FRQ is in a booklet, and then you have like a response booklet too. Are the graders going to publish the FRQ if you got a 5 on those as examples? What? I don't get that question. You mean like, are they going to put out sample ones like with like the ones that we looked at? Yeah, they will. The FRQs will actually be released on probably Thursday, and then they'll put out sample ones after they do all the grading. Okay. All right. So, any other questions about any of that general information stuff? When do you get your score back? July. All right, so let's keep going through the list of confusing pairs. I don't know why my computer is going so slowly. So last time we did up to informational social influence and normative social influence. If you haven't looked at these, this is a good thing. You know, there are so many words that are similar to each other, or they sound similar, but they're different. This is a good resource right here. So the way I've been doing it is putting how they are similar and then how they differ from one another. All right, so attribution theory and the fundamental attribution error. Attribution theory is just the theory that goes with how do we explain our behavior and others' behavior. Okay, what do we attribute it to? Is it situational or is it dispositional? Okay, and then the fundamental attribution error is the error that we make with this, where we tend to overestimate the role of disposition when it comes to others' behavior. Okay, we make that error. We oftentimes we tend to believe that our behavior is due to the situation, others' behavior is due to their disposition. Okay, and just to tie this in with something else, reciprocal determinism, which is the social cognitive perspective view on personality, says that personality is a combination of all of those things, combination of situation and our disposition. All right. Group polarization and groupthink. Two terms that are very easily confused. Both are applied to group behavior, to explain group behavior. Group polarization, though, is the tendency for groups to be more extreme, to become more extreme than the individuals in the group after group discussion. So, for instance, like if you ever had a teacher that you don't like, and you might be like, I don't really like them a whole lot, they're whatever. But then if you're sitting around the lunch table with all of your friends and you all have the same teacher, and you and all of your friends all kind of feel ambivalent towards the teacher, you're talking about them, and as you talk more and more, the group starts to hate the teacher more and more. Okay, as a group, we just get more extreme than as individuals. Group think is our tendency to not voice dissent from a group decision, because we don't want to rock the boat / want to fit in. Okay, so we tend to go along with group decisions, even if we know that they are not good ideas. If everybody seems to agree on it, we will just go along with that group decision. As soon as one person, that's why it's important in a group to have like a devil's advocate. Because generally, as soon as one person speaks up and says, I don't know if this is a good idea, that empowers everybody else to speak their mind as well. Conditioned stimulus versus unconditioned stimulus. They are both part of classical conditioning. The conditioned stimulus is what the neutral stimulus becomes after it has been paired with the unconditioned stimulus. Okay, it is the learned predictor. Okay, so like in Pavlov's study, the conditioned stimulus was the bell that was previously neutral. The neutral stimulus originally elicits no response. This elicits a learned response. The neutral stimulus originally elicits no response, but when it's paired with the unconditioned stimulus, it starts to have it starts to have a conditioned response. The unconditioned stimulus is the unlearned stimulus. It automatically elicits an unlearned response, which is the unconditioned response. So in Pavlov's experiment, that was the food. Okay, food automatically causes a dog to salivate. All right, Pavlov rang a bell, gave the dog food, dog salivated. Eventually, the dog learned that the bell predicted food, so eventually Pavlov's dog would start to salivate at the sound of the bell. Negative reinforcement and punishment. These are both parts of operant conditioning. Okay. Negative reinforcement, however, these are confused all the time. I hear like really smart people confuse these all the time. Negative reinforcement is when a behavior is reinforced, meaning it is reinforced through the removal of an unpleasant stimulus. Hold on one sec. Audrey Cal's calling right now. Hello? Hello? I don't know. It's about calculus. So if you've registered for calculus next year, just make sure you know what the update is. Okay, negative reinforcement. Behavior is reinforced through the removal of an unpleasant stimulus. So, like taking Advil to remove a headache is negatively reinforced. The taking of the Advil is reinforced because it gets rid of the negative stimulus, which is the headache. Punishment is anything that decreases, that anything that follows a behavior that is meant to decrease the behavior. Okay, so negative reinforcement is going to increase the behavior. Just a little hint. Okay, this is also, punishment is also called, specifically negative punishment is also called omission training. Okay, meaning it's training you to omit, to leave out some behavior. Speaking of Advil, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go take an Advil real quick. All right, absolute versus, no, it's negative reinforcement. Taking the Advil is reinforced because it removes the negative stimulus of the headache. Why would you want to get rid of the headache, and it's not decreasing a behavior. Okay. Just think about with operant conditioning, what is it doing to the behavior? All right. Absolute versus difference threshold. Both terms apply to what we sense and perceive. Absolute threshold is the minimum amount of sensory stimulation we need to be able to perceive something. Okay, minimum amount of it for there to be for the neurons to reach the threshold, okay, to fire, to send that signal to the brain. So like, how much salt do you have to put in a soup for you to notice that there is salt in soup? Okay, that would be the absolute threshold. Difference threshold is it's also Weber's law is what governs this for the most part, but it is the percentage of change needed in a stimulus for us to notice the change. That's what Weber's law is. So, like, how much salt do you have to add to soup? If you put in some salt and you notice, like, oh, okay, that's salty. How much more salt do you have to add for you to notice that it has gotten saltier? How much do you have to turn? How much do you have to turn up the volume to notice that it's gotten louder? Difference threshold and Weber's law are basically the difference threshold is just the amount of change. Weber's law says it's not a constant amount. It is a constant percentage. And so the larger the stimulus, the larger the change is going to have to be. Loud music, you need to turn up more than quiet music to notice that it has gotten louder. Good way to memorize terms is by looking at the meaning within the name of the term itself. That's a good point, Rustum. Yep, binocular cues involve two eyes because bi means two and ocular means eyes. Very good. Yep, just use those use those root words. Yes, sir. Yep. Yeah. Rustum coming in with the good advice. All right. Genetics versus heritability. I'm going to change this there to heredity. Heredity is the genetic material passed down from our parents. Okay. Heritability is the amount of difference within a population, the amount of difference, I'm going to change, between individuals in a population that is attributed to the different genetics. Okay, so the difference, if we say that this Zoom call is a population, all right, what is the difference in everybody in here's intelligence that is due to your different genetics? Okay, somewhere between 50 and 80% of the difference is due to different genetics. Okay, so it's just looking at heredity is a genetic thing, heritability is a statistical term. Okay. All right. Bipolar cells versus hair cells. All right. Both of these are where transduction occurs. And what is transduction? Can anybody tell us? Yes. Yeah. Yep. Conversion of sensation, conversion of like stimulus energy into a neural signal. Okay, so bipolar cells, where transduction occurs, bipolar and hair cells. This is where transduction occurs in the retina. As you remember, hopefully it is photoreceptors, which are what? What are the photoreceptors? Yep, cones and rods. Photoreceptors to the bipolar cells. That's where the neural signal is created, to the ganglion cells, and then the ganglion cells, the axons of the ganglion cells make up the optic nerve. Hair cells or cilia is where transduction, sorry, I can't type today. Transduction occurs on the basilar membrane. Okay, so if you remember, the sound waves, sound waves enter the cochlea through the oval window, and it vibrates the liquid inside. Okay, the cochlea is a little snail-shaped thing, vibrates the liquid inside. The hair cells bend, and this creates a neural signal. All right, bottom up versus top down processing. Both explain how we perceive the world. Bottom up processing, though, which is also, bottom up processing, also called feature analysis. This is where you build up a perception from the bottom up. It is sensation followed by perception. This is what we do in new situations. Okay, so when we are experiencing something new, this is what we use when we're having to build. We can tie it back to something else when we're having to build a schema. We're building a schema from the bottom up. Top-down processing is where we make judgments based on expectations, prior experience, etc. Top-down processing is the most important term of the class. There are, I need to make a list of this. There are probably 30 terms that we've gone over all year that basically mean the exact same thing. Perceptual set, priming, heuristics, all of those things are any sort of confirmation bias, belief perseverance. Okay, all of those are examples of top-down processing. All right. Relative size versus relative height. Both of these are, anybody know what the similarity between these is? Yes, Cash. Yep. Okay. Keel. Yep. All right. Both of these. All right. Both are monocular cues. And so, using Rustam's little way to understand what words mean, monocular cues broken down is what? Depth perception that Yep, only uses one eye. Real life example of bottom up processing when you're trying new food. Okay, and like trying something that you've never tried before, and you taste it, and you're like, oh, it's spongy. I'll give you an example. Like with trying new food, we went to an Ethiopian restaurant a while ago, and if anybody's ever had Ethiopian food, one of the things that comes with it is that they have with it is I think it's called angira bread. If I'm mispronouncing that, I'm sorry, but it's a very unique type of bread. It's like it's very soft, it's spongy, it's kind of wet. It's really yeasty, and that's something that I'd never had before. So you kind of have to build up a perception of it. All right, relative size is the idea, and these things. They ask about monocular cues on the FRQs a lot for some reason. Relative size, things that are closer to us are perceived as being larger. Well, actually, I'll add in, if two things are similar sizes, the one that is closer to us is perceived as being larger. So if I have a good one, Rustum, I like that. Ask about binocular because I like to keep an eye on it. It's very good. Rustum, you are killing it today. Okay, two things that are similar sizes. If you have a person who is standing close to you in the hallway and a person at the end of the hallway, the person who's at the end of the hallway is going to seem smaller than the person who's standing close to you, even though you know that they are not. Relative height is things that are higher in our visual field are perceived as being further away. For instance, I'll show you an example. These are used in art. Okay, so in this picture right here, this is relative size and relative height. This tree is higher up in our visual field, so we see it as being further away. Okay. It is also, because these trees are the same size, but we see this one as being further away, we would then perceive this tree to actually be significantly larger than this tree because they are the same size, but this one is seen as further away, but because they seem like they're the same size, we say like, all right, well, this one is definitely bigger then. Okay. All right, schedules of reinforcement. Again, they like asking about these on the FRQs. Schedules of reinforcement are both, they explain when does a reward present itself. A ratio schedule is where the reward is based upon a number of behaviors. So you hold on a sec. Oh, just need to stretch. If you work on an assembly line, for every 10 things that you put together, you get paid $1. Okay. An interval schedule, the reward is based upon a length of time. All right. So if you study for an hour and then you allow yourself to play Call of Duty for 15 minutes. Okay, so every hour you play Call of Duty for 15 minutes, that would be an interval schedule. There are two different types of each of these. Fixed ratio, fixed means it's set. Variable means it is based on an average number or an average or a random length of time. Manifest versus latent content. Both of these are Freudian terms applying to dream analysis. The manifest content is the remembered storyline of a dream, so what you dreamed about. The latent content is the hidden meaning of the dream. Latent means hidden. Projective tests versus personality inventories. These are both types of personality assessments. Projective tests are with psychoanalysis. The patient projects their unconscious thoughts onto an ambiguous image. Anybody know one of the two types of projective tests? All right, yep, the TAT, the thematic apperception test, and the Rorschach ink blot test. With the TAT, you are going to have like an ambiguous picture. With the ink blot, it is just a symmetrical ink blot. Personality inventories are what are used in trait theory. The goal of these is to identify specific personality traits using factor analysis and empirical evidence. So examples of these, the MMPI, Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, which is used now for employment screening. If anybody has ever gotten a job at like Harris Teeter, you may have had to take like a really long test. That was probably the MMPI. The Myers-Briggs, also called the 16 personalities, which a lot of you all have taken before. And then the Big Five inventory, which is considered to be the most valid and most reliable. All right, superego versus ego. They are both part of the Freudian personality structure. You refer to the MMPI as they would almost certainly not ask you about like specifically about the MMPI on an FRQ, because there's not really a way. They might give you one that is that's talking about the results of it, but they wouldn't have you like apply that term, I don't think. Empirically derived test is just a test that is based on scientific evidence, but it also means that it identifies clusters of questions that correlate with one another. That like if you answer these questions a certain way, that indicates a certain personality trait. What about an FRQ on the Big Five? That is very likely. Okay, they have, and that's once I'm done, I'm going to go over the Big Five traits. Right now, I've done it in class as well because there's a question on the final exam about it. Big Five traits have come up, I believe, on for the past 2 years. But you cannot refer to it as the Minnesota test. Just refer to it as the MMPI. All right, so the superego, both part of the Freudian personality structure. The superego is our morality principle. Okay, it is our morals. We develop this when we identify with our same-sex parent. This is the last part of our personality to develop, and it is partially in the unconscious. Like the angel on the shoulder. Yes, it's the proverbial devil on one shoulder, angel on the other. What's the most common unit on the test? Cognition. The ego is based on the reality principle. The goal is to satisfy the id and the superego in realistic ways. It is the second part of our personality to develop. It is conscious. It is also the part of our personality that we show everyone. So I always use it as a everybody has like weird stuff about them, but a lot of times we don't show the rest of the world the weird stuff about us. That weird stuff would be the id, but the part of our personality that we show to everybody else is our ego. The ego keeps everything under control. The id. The id is the part of our personality that we are born with. It is Freud believed that at our core we are all basically just animals. We are inherently evil at our core, and if given the chance, we will just act upon all of our most animalistic urges. Yes, the id consists of animalistic, sexual, and aggressive desires. It's the part that we're born with. It operates on what's called the pleasure principle, which is I just want whatever I want it now. Think about babies. When babies gotta poop, they poop. When they want to eat, they cry. That's the id. Is it genetic? Yeah, I guess so. I mean, you're born. Freud said that you're born with the id. You're born as id. All right. Trichromatic theory versus opponent process theory. Both theories on how we perceive color. Trichromatic theory it takes place in the retina. Basically says that we have three types of cones in our retina that respond to either red, green, or blue light. And the differing levels of the cone's activation triggers neurons in a certain way. So make sure you know what the three colors are. Opponent process theory is in the optic nerve. Basically says that we have neurons that are activated by either red or green, blue or yellow, or black or white. But they can't both be activated at the same time. So when blue is activated, yet the yellow is shut off. Okay. Evidence for this is negative after images. Evidence for this is color blindness. People that are colorblind are usually red or green, but colorblind. All right, alpha waves versus delta waves. Both types of brain waves. Alpha waves are short, quick waves that happen when we are awake but relaxed, so like about to go to sleep. Delta waves are Delta waves are slow, high amplitude waves that happen in stage 3 of sleep. This is what are displayed when we are in deep sleep. What are theta waves? Theta waves are stage 1. And they could ask you about it. I mean, anything is fair game on the AP exam. Just want to make it clear again that I don't make the AP exam. Everything is just guessing for me. That's why we teach you all so much, because anything is fair game. Okay. I don't know if I'm going to go through all of this. All right, drive reduction theory versus optimal arousal theory, both theories of motivation. Drive reduction theory is biological, is that when we have an internal need that creates a drive for us to fulfill that need to maintain what? To maintain homeostasis, all right, to maintain internal balance. Optimal arousal theory is a cognitive theory that says that we seek out optimal levels of arousal to avoid boredom. Everyone is different. Okay, everybody seeks out optimal levels of arousal. Some of you may be well, I mean, I'll give you an example of me and my girlfriend Julia. Like, both of us kind of have optimal levels of arousal. Like on a Saturday, like I want to be out doing something. Okay, like yesterday we went to the Knights game with Coach Webb and his wife, and then we went out for a little while afterwards. Whereas Julia would be perfectly fine, like staying home and just reading all day on a Saturday. So. All right. Further down the Greek alphabet the wave is, the deeper it is. No, that doesn't really work because theta waves are stage 1. That was it almost works, Rustum. Okay, we seek out optimal levels of arousal to avoid boredom. This goes along with the Yerkes-Dodson law, which says that moderate levels of arousal will have the best performance. When we get to, that term has come up a lot on FRQs too. If we're too aroused, we're disorganized. If we're not aroused enough, we're too bored to get things done. James Lange theory versus two-factor theory. These are both theories. Yes, you're right. It does work when comparing alpha and delta waves. Both theories of emotion. James Lange theory is outdated, but it basically says that emotion is the product of physiological arousal, and that, so let's say that you see a ghost, your heart pounds, and then because your heart pounds, you feel afraid. Essentially, it says that specific emotions are connected to specific physiological arousal. It's outdated because what we know now is that our heart pounding can mean a lot of different things. It might be because you're afraid, or it might just be because you're out of breath. When you go for a run, you don't feel fear every time you go for a run. Schachter factor. Schachter two-factor theory, what's also it's also called Schachter two-factor, or you will also see it called Schachter-Singer theory, which says that a following physiological arousal, we put a cognitive label, meaning an interpretation on physiological arousal, and then from that we essentially decide what emotion we should be feeling. So with the ghost one, your heart starts pounding and you think, oh, my heart's pounding because I'm seeing somebody that is dead, therefore I feel afraid because of this. Whereas if you're in like a haunted house, your heart might be pounding, but you're thinking like, oh, my heart's pounding because they're trying to scare me, this is fun. Under the James Lange theory, does the emotional response come as a result of physically stimulated by the physiological? Yes. Good. With James Lange, the emotion is physically stimulated by the physiological response. An example of this potentially is what is called the facial feedback effect, which is the idea that like when we smile, we feel happy. It might be because certain activation of certain muscles in the face are connected with the emotion of happiness, or it could be more of a two-factor thing where it's I'm smiling, therefore I must be happy. One of the theories of emotion more accurate than the others. Yes, two-factor theory. Two-factor theory is correct. James Lange theory, not really correct. Iconic versus echoic memory. Things that people mess up on a lot. All right, both types of sensory memory, which is the first stage of the 3-box model of memory. Iconic memory is the split-second memory, split-second holding cell for visual information. So basically anything that you are looking at any given time goes into your sensory memory. Most of it will not. Most will not be encoded. All right, most of it will not be transferred. Will not be transferred to short-term memory. Echoic memory. One example of iconic memory is doing, or you can just do, if you like waving your hand in front of your face like this, okay, everybody sees a trail when you do that. That trail is your memory of where your hand just was. Tony says, yeah, way to remember this is you could think of it as iconic. Okay. Oh, good. Yeah, that's another good one. Yep. Okay. Echoic memory. Echoic memory is the 3 to 4 second long holding cell for auditory information. It lasts longer because it takes us longer to process auditory information. There's also less of it to process at any given time. Most still will not be transferred. You have to repeat it for it to be transferred to short-term memory. Yeah, we can remember it as like an echo of a cave, or Ayush said E equals ear. But the echo should be pretty straightforward. Also, you saw an iconic item, yes. Okay. Let's see. List, I don't know why I just said list of confusing pairs. Syntax versus semantics. Both parts of language / grammar. Syntax is the order of words in a language. So, you know, adjectives before nouns in English. Okay. Semantics is how we make language meaningful. Okay, so like suffixes and prefixes are example of semantics. Also, like using different tones of voice is semantics. All right, Stanford Binet versus the Wechsler. These are both IQ tests. Stanford Binet is the original IQ test, meant to measure mental age in children. Oh, sorry, never mind. I am mixing that up. But this is the original IQ test developed by Lewis Terman. Mental age divided by chronological age equals IQ. It was used for not so good purposes, for social Darwinism purposes, at least when it was first developed. The Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale is the modern IQ test, has performance and verbal sections. Still uses IQ, but uses a different formula to do it. There are, with the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, what is the average IQ? Yep, 100. Average IQ is 100 with a standard deviation of 15. Okay. Cognitive behavioral therapy is just a type of eclectic therapy that involves changing behaviors while also changing irrational patterns of thought. The idea is that behavior and thinking are connected. So if you have a maladaptive behavior, we want to change that while also changing irrational patterns of thought. Rational emotive behavior therapy is the original cognitive therapy developed by Albert Ellis. It is a confrontational therapy that involves looking at and changing maladaptive patterns of thought. Okay. I'm gonna. Which one is Beck's theory? Beck's is a separate thing. Like Albert Ellis is rational emotive behavior therapy. Beck's therapy, cognitive therapy for depression, basically uses the same idea, but Beck's focuses on depression. Beck said that depression is what's called due to the cognitive triad of having irrational thoughts about yourself, your environment, and your future. Central route of persuasion versus peripheral route persuasion. Central route is where we use facts, evidence, objective information to make a decision. So if you're trying to buy a car, you look and see, okay, well, this car gets 29 miles per gallon, this car gets 32 miles per gallon, this car does this car does this. That's central route persuasion. Peripheral route persuasion is using secondary subjective factors such as appearance to make a decision. So, people that like Donald Trump because they say, I like the way that he talks. He talks like a normal person. That's peripheral route persuasion. Prejudice versus discrimination. Prejudice is a negative attitude towards a group. Discrimination is a negative behavior towards a group. Okay. I'm not going to worry about that one. Well, exposure therapy is a type of counter conditioning in which the patient is exposed to the phobic stimulus. An example of exposure therapy is, well, I'm blanking on something. In this, you usually create a hierarchy of fear, and you build up to the exposure while learning how to relax. Yeah, virtual reality is an example. VRES is an example of it. Flooding is where the patient is exposed entirely to the phobic stimulus. It's not really used anymore because it is oftentimes so traumatic that their fear oftentimes becomes worse. But it'd be like with my fear of frogs, it would be the difference between having me think about a frog and then kind of learn how to breathe, and eventually you breathe and the fear goes away, versus me being thrown into a pool full of bullfrogs and I either deal with it or I have a heart attack and die. What the hell was that? Anybody know? Can anybody explain to me why why this is giving thank you, Tony. Okay, all right, that was weird. Now it won't go away. What? Wait, actually, incidents of death due to flooding therapy? I don't know. I don't know. Oh, classic. Oh, thank you. Okay. Oh, cool. I didn't realize that I could do all this stuff. Huh. Biomedical therapy versus psychotherapy. Biomedical therapy is using drugs, magnetic RTMS, repetitive transmagnetic stimulation, things like that, to treat psychological illness. Psychotherapy is using talk therapy to treat psychological illness or for personal growth in the case of whatever, it's in the case of client-centered therapy. All right, MRI versus PET scans. Okay, both are brain scans. MRI, though, is looking at structure using magnetic waves. MRI, magnetic resonance imaging. PET scan is looking at function using radioactive glucose. They inject radioactive glucose, basically like highlighter fluid, into your veins. Your brain uses glucose for energy so they can see what areas of the brain are being used. All right, we're almost done. Okay, central versus peripheral nervous system. Both are parts of the nervous system. Central nervous system is the brain and spinal cord. Peripheral nervous system is all nerves that branch off of the spinal cord, made up of sensory and motor neurons. And contains what are the two parts of the peripheral nervous system? Yep, the somatic, which is, it's down here. Hold on. All right, give me 1 sec, guys. I gotta go get some more water. Yeah, and just so you know, this this document that I'm typing on is in that folder, so you have all of this. Okay, dendrite versus terminal button, both parts of a neuron. Dendrite are the branches that come. Can you see what I'm typing? Can you not? Can you see my screen on the document? Yeah. If you open up this document, you can see it as I type, or you can just see it on the screen. Branches that come off of the soma, which is the cell body that receive chemical messages in the form of neurotransmitters at the receptor sites. Okay, the terminal buttons are also called the axon terminals or terminal nodules. They have a couple different names, but the terminal buttons are the ends of the axon where neurotransmitters are stored. The action potential triggers release of neurotransmitters from the terminal buttons into the synapse. Terminals is another word for the end, I think it is. Yeah. All right, somatic versus autonomic nervous system. They are both parts of the peripheral nervous system. Somatic nervous system is voluntary muscle movements. Autonomic nervous system is involuntary body functions, such as digestion and pupil dilation. Okay, two parts of it are the sympathetic and parasympathetic. B comes before T. Dendrite is the first thing that travels. Oh, good. Yeah, good. Structuralism versus functionalism. They are both early theories of psychology. They are confusing. Structuralism is Wilhelm Wundt and Edward Titchener, basically looking at the structure of consciousness. Wundt, what is it? Structuralism. Way to remember. All right. Okay. Thank you, Becca. Becca, put that in for everybody. Functionalism is William James. Functionalism is looking at the adaptive value of consciousness. Believe that our consciousness is always changing and adapting. That's all you need to know about those two. Just know the definitions. I doubt they would even ask about those because they're like so outdated. Experiment versus correlation. Both types of research. Experiment is the only way. William James Jiff, Peanut Butter James invented functionalism. I don't get that one. Experiment is the only way to determine cause and effect due to the manipulation of variables. The best type of research, most accurate. Correlation is looking to see if are variables related to one another. All right. Does variable A predict what variable B will do? Either with positive or negative correlation coefficient. Tells us the strength of the relationship. All right, almost done with this. Operational definition versus replication. They are parts of experimentation. Operational definitions are how variables will be measured in an experiment to ensure that everything is being measured the same. It then allows for replication Replication is doing an experiment again to test the results. It's an example of operational definition. Whatever, let's say that it's, if we're looking at, the experiment that I used in my example in unit 1 is if looking at how different diets might affect somebody's ability to run the next day. So eating a high protein diet, low protein diet, or just a normal diet. Okay, and say like, all right, what does high protein mean? We'd have to say like, okay, high protein is having two pieces of chicken and an ounce of chickpeas and like whatnot. That would be the operational definition. Just saying exactly how is this thing going to be measured. All right, and then finally, egocentrism versus theory of mind. They are both parts of cognitive development. Egocentrism is when until mid pre-operations, children do not have the ability to understand that other people have other perspectives. Like they literally don't understand that like what they see is not what everybody else sees. Theory of mind starts to develop around the age of 5 or so. It is the ability to understand that others have their own internal thoughts, feelings, etc. They have no physical capability to have others' perspectives. Good. Yep. Okay. All right. Any questions about any of those? All right. Let's, now what I want to do real quick is we have to know the exact ages when these stages of development happen. You got to know generally. Sensory motor is about age 0 to 2. Pre-operations is about age 2 to 6. Concrete operations is about age 6 to 11. And then formal operations is about age 11 or 12 into adulthood. You have a real life example for manifest and latent content. All right, Rustam, let's share. I'm a little bit worried here, but. I guess, Rustam, are you typing? All right, while we are waiting for Rustam, where was, this is weird. Oh, here, I couldn't see it. So one of the review resources that I just put up on Friday with practice exams and FRQs, 2 released exams, the 2016 exam and the 2012 exam. And then the past exam FRQs. Let's just look at those real quick. So last year, they had 2 different sets of FRQs because one of the things they've noticed is there's sometimes the East Coast gets a different set than the West Coast because the West Coast is taking it later than the East Coast. Had a dream last night where Barack Obama was a Jedi Knight. You have weird dreams. The manifest content is Obama being a Jedi, and the latent content is his political policies, reminding me of the Jedi philosophy in Star Wars. Okay, all right, yeah, that's a good one. All right, I could see Barack as a Jedi. Okay. All right, so here was the first set. So this one right here is the this one here is the concept application one. Explain how Lisa Lafon could apply to Malia's completion of this assignment. So look and see a low score on the big 5 trait of neuroticism. There's the big 5 coming up. External locus of control, another one that I said that they have put on there a lot recently. And then here's the second one where you're having to look at a set of data, identify the dependent variable. Really for this one, for these here, and I will show you an example of, I don't know, I'm not sure. Let me see which one of these is the high scoring one. Sample 1A. All right, so this one right here, this is for question 1. This one scored a 7 out of 7. All right, so you can see just how they wrote it. Okay, each thing is in a separate paragraph. They underlined it. They put, part A on there, but that was it. And let's see. Question 1 sample. This one got a 1 out of 7. Okay, and you can see like this would be really, really hard to grade. Question, and then for question 2, the one where you had to look at the graph. Let me see which one of these. So all right, so 1A got a 7. So you can see here, like they didn't necessarily write in paragraphs. They still score it. It's just easier. Oh wait, this is question 1. What am I looking at? Oh, quick. Question 2, set 1. Okay. I'm confused here. Okay. All right. Oh, okay. I think they messed that up. So, all right. Saran asked to go, if we can go over this one real quick. All right. Dr. Jones was doing a formal research study on the effect of mental imagery on memory. She randomly assigned students in the psychology course she was teaching into 2 groups and required them to complete the task. Part of their homework, 40 students were in each group. Each group was presented the same list of 30 pairs of words. Each group was given 2 minutes to memorize the pairs. Okay, and scoring guidelines for, set number 2 on set 1. Sorry. These scoring guidelines are weird. Okay, so it asks identify the dependent variable. Okay, so for this one right here, must indicate the score on the quiz is the dependent variable. You literally could write that as the dependent variable is the student score on the quiz. Okay, that's all you would have to write. Except, okay, you can see you can't just define it. Explain how the study could be modified to be an experiment. The response must indicate that the study could be modified by adding random assignment to make it an experiment. Study needs to have random assignment in each experimental condition in order for it to be an experiment. Compare the group 1 to the group mode of the group 2. Literally all you have to say is the mode for group 1 is 3. The mode for group 2 is 4. All right. So they are different. Identify the measure of central tendency that needs to be calculated to determine the standard deviation. The response must indicate that the mean is the measure of central tendency that is calculated to determine the standard deviation. Explain the ethical flaw. What didn't make it anonymous or confidential? Explain how metacognition could apply to the scenario. Individuals' ability to think about their own thinking. Okay, so this is all available for all of you all to look at. Let's see, in 2019, let's look at this. All right, so here's the 2019 one. What all do you underline? Whatever the term is that they're asking about. Here's the 2019 one where it was asking about a holiday in which children wore masks. This is the research application one where you just had to basically do the same thing we just looked at. I think you said this before, but if you do a good on the multiple choice and okay on FRQ, is it a 5? Somewhere around there. Have you released the scores for the latest practice FRQs that we did? I have not yet. Sorry. I know I should have. We didn't have time to do the peer grading, and so I'm grading them all myself, but that's my fault. All right, and then here is the second one. You can see extroversion on there is one of the big 5 traits. Okay, all right. Are there any questions about any of that? Yeah. Let me pull up. So in the student handouts folder for Unit 7, even though I never went over it, I did put the PowerPoint in there for trait theory. Let's see. How many people do we have in here still? 89. Okay, so we've lost about 30. Couldn't handle the grind. Yep. All right, Big 5. Big 5 is the most valid and most reliable personality test nowadays. It is. If anybody's ever taken it, it is pretty accurate. Let me see. Let's see, 538, Big 5. Rustin's winking. I'm going to put in the chat a link to one of the versions of the Big 5. If anybody wants to take it, it'll show you sort of the breakdown of with these five different factors. It's pretty accurate. All right, so Big 5. It took Eyesink's 2 dimensions of personality, which was extroversion and neuroticism, and added 3 more. Okay. The way that you can remember these is either canoe or ocean. Okay, it just depends on what order you want to have them in. But the 5 different factors are conscientiousness. And this is measured on a scale. Conscientiousness is how disciplined are you? Basically, how much do you think about other people, but like how organized, how disciplined, all these different things. Agreeableness is one of those things, is how well do you get along with other people? How helpful you are, how trusting, or are you like ruthless, uncooperative, whatnot. Neuroticism is emotional stability versus instability. High neuroticism is high emotional instability. Very anxious. Low neuroticism is high emotional stability, calm, not anxious, whatnot. Openness is openness to new experience. How much do you like to do new things? How much do you like to try new things? How imaginative are you? And then finally, extroversion, how outgoing, how affectionate, and whatnot are you? So those are the big 5 factors. Okay. So any other questions about the big 5? Thank you. Okay. All right. So does anybody have any like content questions that like anything specifically that you want me to go over? Biological versus evolutionary. Biological is just looking at how like different things are passed down genetically. And evolutionary is looking at how behaviors and whatnot have developed to help us survive and reproduce. Difference between psychodynamic and psychoanalytic. Not a whole lot of difference. Psychodynamic's a little bit newer, looking at basically how like things in our past affect us now, versus psychoanalytic is focused more on the unconscious. Okay, I'm not going to be able to do all this, but go over Piaget's stages. I did that last time. Neurotransmitters, you just got to memorize these. Dopamine is attention, reward. Serotonin is mood and movement. Acetylcholine is movement and memory. Norepinephrine is like adrenaline. Okay, it's just the neurotransmitter. So activation of whatnot. I'm blanking on the word. GABA slows us down, is inhibitory. It slows us down. Glutamate is excitatory. It speeds everything up, helps with memory. And endorphins are natural painkillers. What units should you study the most in the next 2 days? Well, look at the master study guide. Look at the percentages that are on there. Okay. Cognition is the biggest one. Difference between classical conditioning and operant conditioning. Both are associative learning, but classical conditioning is learning that 2 things that were unrelated, one thing predicts the other thing. Operant conditioning is learning that a behavior has a consequence, and that behavior either increases or decreases the behavior. That consequence either increases or decreases. Share the confusing word stock to my email because you're not in my class. I shared the I put it in the chat. I'll put it in there again though. Okay. Alzheimer's is acetylcholine. Master study guide does go over all the units. Okay. Are ganglion or bipolar cells first? Bipolar cells. How is content on people usually tested on the AP exam? I don't understand that question. What do you mean, like the important people? Is language considered to be implicit or explicit memory? It becomes implicit. Something, because we learn language and then it becomes automatic, it becomes implicit. Like being able to talk becomes implicit. On the AP exam, is there going to be some questions where they will give you a diagram of neurotransmitter, ear or eye, and they could give you diagrams of the ear or the eye and ask you to identify the part that it is pointing to. We try, guys, any sort of question that you've gotten on our multiple choice test, we get all those from, we try to make those as accurate as possible. I don't have time. Go over Erickson stages. They just take too long to go over right now. is the Master Study Guide and the AP exam resources. It's I have literally I've been showing you all where the Master Study Guide is for 2 months. It is on the important documents. It is also right here. Master Study Guide 2022. And there is social learning theory, the idea that we learn through observation. Positive psychology and humanistic psychology, they're very, very similar. Positive psychology is newer, specifically looking at the factors that lead to human flourishing. Humanistic psychology is looking at things that either help us or hurt us in our personal growth. Okay. All right, so any other questions? Unlock the practices for all the units on College Board. Yeah, I can do that. Okay. All right, well, if anybody would like to stay on a little bit longer and do a Kahoot or a couple of Kahoots, I can do that. I'll stay on for about 15 more minutes. AP Psychology. The Barron's has made quite a few of these that are pretty good, except for the fact that there are a couple of the questions that were wrong on the one we looked at on Friday. Okay. All right. So let's do actually let's do cognitive psychology, part 1. No, we're gonna be done after the Kahoots.